What would you do if someone tried to steal your entire family farm while you were on vacation? Well, in today's wild story, not only did it happen, but the thief never saw the perfect trap waiting for her. Stick around to see how this tale of greed, betrayal, and ultimate revenge unfolds. You won't believe the ending. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a twist-packed story like this one. The heat in Thailand was thick and slow, like honey in the Ihu's Toiturha sun. The waves slapped the shore with lazy rhythm, while I sipped a coconut drink and sank into the hammock. I remember the laughter of tourists in the distance, the way the breeze smelled of salt and jasmine. I remember the moment it all shattered. Mine phone buzzed once. A voicemail. It was Tom, my neighbor from back home. His voice was strained, like he was whispering and yelling at the same time. "Jake, something weird is happening at your farm. There's a moving truck and guys in suits walking around like they own the place. They cut the gate lock and put up a sign, HOA enforcement authorized entry only. You need to come back now, man." I sat there frozen. The coconut slipped from my hand and shattered on the patio, the sticky juice spreading across the tiles like a warning. My heartbeat roared in my ears louder than the ocean. My family's land, my blood and memory, was being invaded. 12 hours later, I was on a plane. 15. After that, I stood on the gravel road. I grew up driving down. Only now. There was a steel chain wrapped around the front gate, and a bright white sign nailed across it. Community property under HOA oversight. Effective. Immediately. I gripped the chain so tight, my fingers turned white. The metal dug into my palm. This was the farm my grandfather built with his bare hands. 800 acres of orchard, pasture, woodland, and creek. My father died maintaining it. My mother's ashes were scattered under the willow near the barn. And now, some paper pusher had claimed it as hers. Her name was carved in plastic under the sign Karen Willoughby, president of the Oak Ridge Hills Homeowners Association. She was new appointed just a year ago by the board of the subdivision that backed up to the southern edge of our property. She came from money. Drove a pearl white luxury SUV, had nails like claws, and a permanent expression like something smelled bad. The first time I met her, she asked if I could move my fence line back 5 feet to give her better views. From her backyard patio, I laughed and said no. She didn't laugh. Back, Karen saw my family land as messy. She called it untamed, unordered, uncivilized. She hated the chicken coop, the wildflowers, the natural irrigation ditches. She once complained that my tractor made too much noise and that my horses stank up the breeze during her dinner parties. When I left for Thailand 3 weeks ago, I hired Sam, my ranch hand, to check in twice a week. Nothing seemed off until it all happened at once. I climbed over the gate. Walked past the crushed remains of my mom's flower bed. Half the fruit trees had yellow caution tape around them. My greenhouse had been emptied. There were tire marks in the soil, and a bulldozer parked beside the barn. My barn, its doors were wide open. Inside, all the family furniture was gone. My dad's war medals, gone, the oil paintings, the antique wood chest my great-grandfather built, gone. My breath hitched in my throat. I walked until I saw the porch. It had been pressure washed and repainted. The color was wrong. It was too bright, too clean, too foreign. Then I saw her Karen standing on the porch, like she had lived there her whole life, wearing a lavender blouse and holding a clipboard, surrounded by 3 HOA board members who looked more like realtors than neighbors. She smiled when she saw me. That smug teeth-tight smile people wear when they think they've already won. "Jake," she said, "I didn't expect you back so soon." "What is this?" I asked. "What the hell are you doing on my property?" She looked at her clipboard and flipped a page. "You abandoned the property for more than 10 consecutive days with no legally designated overseer. Your pasture grass was 12 inches over community code. According to Section 14.6 of the Oak Ridge Hills Covenant, the HOA is authorized to seize and repurpose any adjacent land that poses a risk to community appearance or safety." "This isn't HOA land," I said. "This is private farmland outside your jurisdiction." "That's where you're wrong," she said. "Your grandfather never filed the county subdivision exemption correctly when zoning lines changed in '98. We verified it with the county clerk, and under emergency nuisance provisions we executed a temporary lien." My mouth went dry. I knew the zoning was a mess. I always thought we were grandfathered in. No one ever enforced those rules. No one ever cared until now. "You can't do this," I said. "I'm calling the sheriff." "Please do," she said. "We already spoke to them. They said it's a civil matter." "Good luck fighting it without a lawyer and title deed in hand." She turned her back and walked into my house. My house. As if she owned it. I didn't move. Not for 5 minutes. Not for 10. Every board in that home, every nail, every patch of dirt, held generations of sweat and blood. And in less than 3 weeks, this woman had claimed it, like it was a prize from a garage sale. I sat on the porch steps, closed my eyes, and thought about my father. About the way he told me, always keep your paper trail tight. Always protect the land. He used to say, one day someone will come for it. Jake, but if you're smart, you'll already be waiting. I opened my eyes and smiled. Because I had been smart, Karen thought she had won. She thought I had nothing, but 3 months ago I filed something too. I just never thought I'd need to use it, until now. And that was her mistake. She woke the wrong man. She tried to steal the wrong land. And the trap she triggered was perfect. The next morning I drove into town with my fists clenched on the steering wheel. The sun barely touched the rooftops, and already the courthouse parking lot was full. I walked up the marble steps with dust still clinging to my boots and fire in my chest. Inside the clerk's office, the air smelled like old paper and lemon disinfectant. I tapped the bell once. A young guy with round glasses and a coffee stain on his shirt looked up. "I need property filings for parcel 903/B, west of Oak Ridge Hills," he blinked. "Do you have proof of ownership, sir?" I handed him a laminated copy of my grandfather's land title. He flipped through it and nodded slowly. "This is old," he said. "Real old." "I know," I said, "but it's still valid, right?" He hesitated, typed something on the computer, then frowned. "There's a conditional zoning clause noted here from back in '98. It says your land was flagged for review after county line adjustments. But no final adjudication was recorded." I stared at him. "Meaning what?" He tapped the keyboard again. "It means the land was left in a sort of gray area. Not quite exempt, not quite included. Technically, any new development within a certain radius could file for extended HOA annexation." I took a step back. So she wasn't lying? He shook his head. Not entirely. But, he said, there's a newer entry. Filed by you 3 months ago. I nodded. Yeah, he looked impressed. You filed for designation under the County Historical Agricultural Registry. Effective indefinitely. Under that ruling, the land is protected from rezoning, annexation, or urban development without a state-level review. And it's approved, I asked. He smiled. Stamped, notarized, and bulletproof, I felt. The first crack of relief. But paper alone wasn't enough. Karen had already moved in. She had altered the land. Evicted my workers. Torn out my crops. I needed leverage. Something public. Something legal. Something loud, so I called Sam. He met me by the creek. His hands were still greasy from working the south fence. His face was dark with anger. They shut down the irrigation, he said. Disconnected the main valves and slapped red tags on the pump house. Claimed it was a safety hazard. I looked. At the dry earth around us, the grass was brittle, the soil already cracking. How many times did I tell Karen not to mess with the system? I muttered. It's balanced like a clock. She doesn't care, Sam said. She wants the land baron. So, she can justify paving it. My jaw clenched. They're planning a golf course, aren't they? He nodded. Already passed the idea to the HOA board. They think if they keep it dry long enough, you'll give up. I laughed. The kind of laugh that starts low. End bitter. They didn't understand. This wasn't just land. This was legacy. This was war, and I had every receipt. Back at my truck, I pulled out the manila envelope I kept locked in the glove box. Inside were maps, contracts, letters from the county, photos of my grandfather with state agriculture officials from the 70s. Every document needed to prove what this land meant, what it was worth, not in dollars, but in heritage. The Historical Agricultural Registry was more than a title. It was a shield. It meant any alteration without the owner's approval, any development without cultural impact studies, any eviction without formal court order was not only void, it was a crime. And I knew exactly who to call. Rebecca Stone, environmental. Lawyer Sharp, as a nail famous for suing developers into bankruptcy. And more importantly, an old friend from college. She answered on the second ring. Jake Langford, she said. Didn't think I'd hear your voice unless someone tried to poison your horses again. Close enough. I said, I think my land just got hijacked by an HOA president with a god complex. She whistled. Tell me everything. By the time I finished, she was already typing furiously. You've got a case, she said. A big one. And if what you said is true, they're not just trespassing. They're committing agricultural fraud, property interference, and environmental damage. I told her about the irrigation, the bulldozer, the missing antiques, the repainted porch. Send me pictures, she said. All of them. Then sit tight. I hung up, heart pounding with new purpose. Later that afternoon, I drove to the hardware store, bought 3 trail cams, and nailed them to trees around the property, each one angled at a different corner. The TE barn, the back pasture, the irrigation tank. That evening I sat in my truck and waited. Around midnight, I saw her headlights. Karen pulled in with a second SUV. 4 men got out. Carrying surveying equipment and long measuring poles, I filmed the whole thing from behind the corn silo. Every word they said, every stake they drove into my soil, every flash of arrogance on her face when she pointed toward my orchard and said, "This will be the new clubhouse patio." The next morning, I sent the footage. to Rebecca, along with photos of every tree marked for removal, every pipe tampered with, every storage unit broken open. She didn't reply for 2 hours. Then I got a one-line text. Do not say a word to them until I arrive. That night, the cameras caught something else: 2 HOA board members loading my generator onto a trailer. They laughed while they did it. One of them mimed wiping sweat off his brow and said, "This hick has no idea what's coming." Oh, but I did, and soon so would everyone else when Rebecca showed up the next morning. She was dressed in all black, with a briefcase and boots meant for war. She stood at the gate, snapped a photo of the illegal chain, then looked at me and said, "Let's burn their paperwork to the ground." The next day, we filed the cease and desist, sent certified letters to the HOA board, to Karen, to the local zoning office, to the sheriff. Within 48 hours, they were legally required to stop all development, vacate the property, and return any removed assets. But Karen didn't stop. She was arrogant. She believed she was too rich, too connected, too clever, so she ignored the order. And that was the last mistake she'd ever make. Because now it wasn't just personal, it was criminal. And I had every piece of evidence, every document, every photo, every second of stolen footage. And soon, everyone in town would see it. Rebecca wasted no time. She marched right into the county courthouse with her boots echoing down the hallway like war drums. She dropped the flash drive onto the clerk's desk with the kind of finality that said this wasn't a request. The clerk leaned over the footage and recoiled as he watched. Then he looked at the printed cease and desist orders already signed by a judge, and quietly picked up the phone. By sundown, the sheriff was on his way. I stood by the gate watching the gravel dance. Under the tires of his cruiser, he stepped out slow, thumb hooked on his belt, eyes squinting at the fence, like he didn't quite believe what he was seeing. "This land yours?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said. "Been in my family since 1946. He nodded. "You got proof?" I handed him the certified documentation Rebecca had prepared. He looked it over, whistled low. "You're more than covered, son." He flipped to the photo page. "These the people who came in without permission." "Yes," I said. "And they didn't just trespass. They changed locks, shut down irrigation, moved my stuff, threatened my workers." He sucked air through his teeth. "Well then," he said, "sounds like we got ourselves a problem." He walked to the chain on the gate, lifted the bolt cutters from his trunk, and snapped it in half with one hard squeeze. The gate groaned open. It felt like breathing for the first time in days. Inside, the land looked like it had aged a year in just a week. Crops, drying, sheds broken into one of. The tractors parked weirdly off-kilter as if someone had tried to drive it and failed. Karen stood near the old barn in a wide straw hat and white slacks, like she was ready for a brunch photo shoot. When she saw the sheriff, she took 2 steps forward. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man has been harassing me and my workers all week." He raised a hand. "Ma'am, you need to stop talking right now." Her eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. This land was annexed. We followed every regulation." "No, you didn't?" Rebecca said as she stepped out from behind the cruiser. Her voice was ice. "Your annexation was built on an outdated clause that never went through adjudication. The real protection is the historical designation which you violated," Karen scoffed. "And who are you?" "I'm the lawyer who's about to ruin your life." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. The sheriff walked over. Ma'am, we have video proof of you and your associates trespassing, removing property, and interfering with protected land. You are required to vacate immediately under court order. Her voice rose in pitch. You can't be serious. This is harassment. I represent the HOA. We have rights. Not on this land you don't, Rebecca said. And the more you talk, the deeper you dig that hole. Karen looked around, waiting for someone to back her up. But there was no one. Just a few of her workers standing awkwardly behind a pile of landscaping stones. Uncertain. Avoiding her gaze, the sheriff turned to them. Y'all get in your vehicles and leave now. You're on private protected property, and failure to comply is a criminal offense. They didn't argue. One by one, they climbed into their trucks and drove off. Karen remained frozen. Then she snapped. You'll regret. This, she hissed. You don't know who I am? I can make your life a living hell. Rebecca smiled. Ma'am, you've already made mine pretty entertaining. The sheriff began writing the citation. Karen turned and stormed off toward her SUV. But Rebecca followed. Before you go, you'll want to hear something. Karen spun on her heel. What now? You didn't just break property law. Rebecca said. You applied for permits using fraudulent documents. You claimed ownership of land you never had legal rights to. That's state-level fraud. And trust me, we're pressing charges. Karen went pale. You wouldn't dare. I already did, Rebecca said. And the DA is very interested. Karen climbed into her car, slammed the door, and peeled off down the dirt road with a cloud of dust behind her. But even from a distance, I could see it in her posture. She knew she'd lost. Back in the barn, Sam was fixing the irrigation controls. He looked up and smiled as water finally gushed through the pipes again. The hiss of flowing life across the field. The land exhaled, but I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Karen wasn't the kind of person to walk away quietly. She had power, money, and a reputation to maintain, and when people like her start to lose, they don't retreat. They retaliate. Sure enough. 3 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Certified, stamped with a gold seal. It was from her attorney. A threat of civil litigation for defamation, trespass, and emotional distress. I laughed out loud as I read it. Rebecca read it too. Then she chuckled. Desperate move. She knows she's cornered. I tossed the letter in the burn barrel and watched it curl into ash. Then we made our next move. Rebecca drafted a formal complaint to the State Bar Association citing misuse of legal authority and fraudulent claims by Karen, and her HOA board. Sam contacted the local press, shared photos. The cease order, the historical registry, within 24 hours. The story hit the front page of the county news. Local man battles. HOA takeover of 800-acre farm wins. Legal victory. People started calling old friends reporters. Even a local news channel wanted to do a segment. The tide had turned. The court of public opinion was in motion, and Karen was no longer on the winning side. 2 more letters arrived, both from HOA board members resigning. One handwritten, apologizing for getting involved. Karen's empire was crumbling, and all she could do was watch. We began rebuilding the property, repairing fences, replanting damaged rows, installing better security. Sam installed motion lights across the barn roof. Just in case, Rebecca filed suit in district court, formal charges against Karen for trespassing, fraudulent annexation, and damage to protected property. The sheriff signed off on the arrest warrant. It was real now. No more warnings, no more bluffing. The final blow was coming, and it would be public, loud, and unforgettable. I sat by the gate that night, looking over the fields, the soil still scarred, but healing the moon. Overhead, like a spotlight on a stage. Soon everyone would know not just what she did, but what she lost and how badly she underestimated me. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and still, like the land itself was holding its breath. I stood in front of the mirror, tightening my collar. Rebecca handed me the final copy of the complaint, stamped and sealed her fingers, brushing mine with silent reassurance. "You ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. Outside the courthouse, the news vans had already gathered, reporters with cameras, microphones, even drones humming above the steps. The story had gone viral overnight, and people wanted a front row seat to watch Karma catch up to Karen. She arrived late. Of course, wearing a tailored white suit, like she was headed to a country club luncheon instead of a courtroom. Her lips pressed into a smug line, eyes scanning the crowd for sympathy that wasn't there. I watched her strut past the reporters with practiced arrogance, but her steps faltered just slightly when she saw me. When she saw Rebecca, when she realized she was walking into a war she couldn't win inside. The room buzzed with quiet energy. Every bench filled farmers, locals, former HOA members, even one of the contractors who had quit halfway through her illegal takeover. The judge entered grim and gray-haired. The gavel cracked once, and silence fell. We presented our case in full. Rebecca spoke with precision, outlining every violation, showing aerial photos, citing historical land protection statutes, playing the footage of her yelling at Sam, of her laughing as she locked the gate behind her. Every detail laid bare. Karen's attorney stood, trying to dismiss it all as a misunderstanding, a clerical error, a dispute between neighbors. But when the judge looked down at Karen and asked her directly, "Did you enter this property without a verified deed or court approval?" her answer was barely a whisper. Yes, it was over. The judge ruled swiftly. Her actions had been unlawful. Her use of HOA authority was null outside residential boundaries. Her destruction of crops, her interference with infrastructure, her submission of fraudulent documentation, all punishable offenses. He ordered immediate restitution for damages, a public apology, and a fine that would strip the HOA's remaining reserves down to zero. But that wasn't the end as the gavel fell. The deputies approached Karen, hands on their belts. "You are being taken into custody for filing false documents, trespassing on protected land, and attempting to obstruct justice." Her face went slack. "You can't. I'm a board president. I have influence." "One," deputy replied without flinching. "Not anymore." The flash of cameras lit the room as they escorted her out, reporters shouting questions, flashes catching her stunned face, her wrinkled suit, her power unraveling stitch by stitch. I walked out into the sunlight. The crowd parted like a tide, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe deep without bitterness. Sam clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it, boss. You really did it." "No," I said. "We did." Rebecca smiled beside me. "You realize this case just set precedent." She tried to steamroll the law and got flattened instead. She thought I was just some farmer. I said, "She forgot that this land remembers every hand that ever worked it, every voice that ever stood its ground." We returned home, to the fields glowing in the golden light. Sam fired up the old grill, and we had the first proper meal in weeks. Rebecca laughed as the goats tried stealing food from our plates. Even the dogs seemed to know that peace had returned. The next day, a local paper published a cartoon Karen standing in front of the barn, holding a broken gavel and a sign that read, HOA Queen, dethroned by common sense. It went viral within hours. People all over the country were sharing it, laughing, clapping, sending messages of support, but more than the memes, more than the headlines. What mattered most was the silence. No more threats, no more strangers, just the hum of wind through wheat, the soft pulse of sprinklers, and the rhythm of a farm healing. Weeks passed the Aichu. Land began to bloom again. The scars fading. The fences stronger. Sam built a new gate. This one with reinforced steel and an automated lock. Rebecca helped register the entire property under the updated heritage code, making sure this would never happen. Again, Karen's former board disbanded quietly, her name scrubbed from HOA records, her social media accounts locked down, but the story lived on, and so did the message. You don't get to steal what generations built. You don't get to walk in with arrogance and walk out untouched. One afternoon, I stood under the old oak by the well, the same one my grandfather planted when he first claimed this land. I looked out over the fields and felt the quiet, the power, the weight of justice served. A car pulled up the driveway. Rebecca stepped out holding a basket of fresh fruit. She walked over, smiled. "How's it feel?" "Feels like home," I said. We sat beneath the oak watching the sun dip below the hills. A rooster crowed too early. The wind carried the scent of rosemary and earth, and in that moment, it didn't matter what came next, because the land was mine again, and no one, not even a self-righteous HOA tyrant, could take that from me. Ever again, the camera of the world had caught her downfall, but I had reclaimed something deeper, a legacy, a future, a truth too old and too rooted to ever be moved by petty power. And as the stars blinked into the sky, one by one I whispered to the land, "We're back, and we're never leaving again."